Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 542nd episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have a rocket engineer, the rocket man, Tim Van Milligan. I had alluded to him a few episodes ago. This is an interesting dude. I remember he emailed me, kind of picking on guest 531, who was a returning guest, Dan Hill, PhD. Talked about selling and emotions. And Tim, I almost ignored the email, but I was like, this is kind of curious. He's from Colorado Springs. You know, the Air Force Academy is there. So I don't know. I read it. And I was like, all right, let's talk. And he is basically kind of sort of indirectly yet directly calling out Myers-Briggs, DISC, all those kinds of things. He's come up with his own 4-part breakdown of temperaments. I've been going through his book. It is deep, I'll just say that. But it's always been deep for me, this whole personality thing, DISC and Myers-Briggs. I've always struggled with it. And after plugging away for decades, I've gotten good at it. But it was definitely a skill I had to work on breaking people down, putting them into their buckets and trying to read them and adjust. I do a lot of it naturally, so I was lucky in that regard. Maybe playing sports helped. Certainly, I think being in the military, in the academy, in the leadership training, I learned how to engage with people, how to read the room, how to size up my opponent, and just people in general. But the more I have spent time, focused energy, like intellectual time on it, it's always paid dividends. So you need to know this stuff. I've had several guests on. I'll link to them in the show notes and on the blog post. Dan Hill is one. I've had, over the years, so many. Bill Sturls, Stephen Sisler. I'll create another section on the salespodcast.com, which will redirect to my website, and add these resources so it's just more convenient for you. I could take some NLP guys and put it in there, but I've taken very minute parts of NLP and used some of it. But you got to be careful with that stuff. And again, that's something that would take half a lifetime to really master. And you got to be careful, too, that you're not doing this to manipulate people. The goal in all of this, the difference between manipulation and persuasion is your motivation. So as long as you're using this for good, using this to connect with people, to help them find their answers, then you're good to go. If you're trying to become a jerk with all this, then stop listening. I don't want you doing this. But if you're a jerk, you won't listen to me. So anyway, come do jujitsu with me and tell me what a jerk you are. And then we'll do a little tournament style and double or nothing on who can use the other guy's stuff. But I digress. You're in for a treat, all right? So enjoy this. I spoke about it this morning in the Monday morning call. So if you want to grow your sales, check out makeeverysale.com. If you want to get the on-demand content, go there, use promo code WEDDING. I'm going to honor that until February 14th when love is in the air, because I've got 2 weddings to pay for this year. So that'll get you 45% off the Make Every Sale on Demand course. All right, so check that out. And then after you invest in that course, come on back and listen to this episode with Tim Van Milligan. Tim Van Milligan, the Rocket Man, all the way from Colorado Springs. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me. It's glad to be here.
So, you have this mild-mannered demeanor, but you just came on with a full frontal assault on an email last week, a week or two ago. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? because I had Dan Hill. We're talking about emotions and negotiations, and you brought up selling by personality types, and I tried to look you up, and I'm kind of envious. I want to be a man of mystery, but still do what I love, and you've kind of captured that. So I'm jealous and I'm curious, and I welcome your approach to emotions. Like I said, personality and negotiation, everything we're going to get into. But how the heck did you get into that? You're a rocket man. You're literally a rocket man. You own apogeerockets.com. Your website, it's all about rockets. You worked for NASA. How did we end up here? What the heck is going on?
Well, like everybody else, eventually I became my own boss and I became an entrepreneur. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're always looking for that little edge on how to sell to different customers. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
So walk me through that, though, because you're an engineer by trade, right?
Right.
And training. I assume you went to Embry-Riddle. I mean, that's a technical college, right? How did you make that transition from technician to entrepreneur? Because a lot of people don't bridge that gap successfully.
It was a long road. So I started out at the Kennedy Space Center working for McDonnell Douglas, who is now Boeing. And from there, I got hired on to a rocket company here in Colorado, toy model rockets. And that's what I loved as a kid. I just grew up with it and enjoyed it and did it all the time. So I had a job, but eventually I got let go. And so when I was let go, it was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And so I really loved the industry of, selling to consumers, the model rocket products. So I decided to start my own company. And it was a long road because, those first 10 years were, if my wife wasn't supporting us, it would have been really skimpy. But over that 10-year period, I learned.
So nothing like trial by fire, huh?
Right.
When your back is up against the wall, some people crumble under that pressure and others kind of rise up to the occasion. It's hard. I tell people all the time, be present and detach, right? Like you're in the moment, you got to be in the moment, make it work, do what you got to do. But at the same time, like when I'm doing jujitsu, right, I'm trying to survive these attacks, but also trying to study them so I can learn from them, not just do a 6-minute sparring session and just go, man, I'm tired, thanks. Like I'm trying to, how did they attack? Right hand, left hand, where was their foot? How did they roll? And it's hard.
Right.
But
you're looking for those little nuances that can really help you out.
Yeah. But as you're trying to survive, I'm trying not to die, trying not to get my joints broken, my throat crushed. I'd say, oh, wow. Is he using his left hand or his right hand? It's like, so is that why it took you 10 years? I mean, it's hard. It's hard to learn all of this while you're just doggy paddling, right? Trying to keep your head above water.
Right. Exactly. And so, and one of those little tricks that I learned, kind of like what you're learning in jujitsu, is the little tricks of emotions. And that's what kind of, sparked my interest in that podcast episode that you had.
So walk me through that though, because this is not a normal story, right? I mean, entrepreneurs, when they start out on their own, I mean, most people, they hate sales and marketing. It's crazy, right? They're an entrepreneur, but it's like your job is to market and sell, and they really fight it.
In college, I was also on the school newspaper, but my job on the school newspaper was to sell the ads. So I really loved it because it gave me that extra cash that you need when you're a college student. And, there was a lot of perks, you'd sell an ad to a pizza place, and while you're sitting there, he's feeding you pizza. So I don't mind selling. I don't mind interacting with customers.
All right. So like you said, it took you 10 years, but now you've got a thriving business in one field, but you've got more than just a passing interest in emotions and persuasion and personality. I mean, you've written books now on specifically selling by personality type. What made you formalize this, curiosity?
Well, it was two huge discoveries. It was kind of like nuclear bombs going off in my mind. And it was one of those things that I'd never heard before. And I, at the time, I felt that if I didn't write it down and I got hit by a bus, the world would not have this information. And I wanted my kids to have it. At least, you want to, give your kids that advantage in growing up. So I decided to write it down. And, and then at that point, it's just, trying to help other people too, people that are going through the same issues that we face, try to help them out.
So, I'm sitting here clicking too many buttons and open a window. So what are those? You said two big nuclear bombs. Okay. You can't I figure you're going to keep talking. I'm over here trying to update the post as we're going.
It's kind of like,
I need to know at least one of them.
Okay. One of them is the emotions. And this one I think is so big that it deserves the Nobel Prize in economics for the implications of what it can do for salespeople. And what I discovered was that emotions are triggered, and there's a formula to trigger them. So when when I was listening to the podcast before with Don Hill, or is it Dan Hill? I'm sorry. He was talking that there was 5 emotions, and in actuality, there's 10. And the thing about them is that you can see them on a person's face. So it doesn't take any special training to recognize an emotion. So the 10 emotions are happiness. I'm trying to count them on my finger so I don't forget them. Happiness, sadness, fear, anger, embarrassment, guilt, shame, disgust, contempt, and surprise. All of those you can see on a person's face. So the way to, and what I said is they can be triggered. So what does that mean to be triggered? So the other day I was feeding my cat, and I was bending over to pour the food into the cat's bowl, and I accidentally stepped on her tail. And 2 things happened immediately. First, she yelled out a screech, "Wow!" And then she shot off into the other room. And so that is a very good analogy of what an emotion is and the triggering effect. So there's a triggering effect, and then there are 2 events that happen afterwards. So in the case of emotions, there's the triggering event, and then there's the emotion, and then the second event is an action. And that action is what intrigued me. Because as salespeople, that's our goal, is to get people to take an action. So now we have a formula to get people to take an action. And so the formula, and this will work 100% of the time. So pick an emotion that you want to trigger. And then the formula is to find out what somebody values and interact with that value. And that will trigger an emotion. So for example, there's 4 emotions that salespeople use all the time: happiness, fear, anger, and shame. So how do you trigger happiness? So happiness is triggered when you can take something that somebody values and honor it. That's the formula. Every time it works. So for an example, you have a beautiful daughter that was, popped up into your screen there a little bit before we came on, and, brought you a cup of coffee. And if I honor what you value, it's going to trigger happiness inside of you. Understand?
Sure.
Okay, so now how do you trigger anger? So anger is triggered when something you value is attacked. So if somebody would come and attack your daughter, the first emotion you're going to feel is anger. Fear is triggered when something you value is threatened. So say your daughter got really sick. That's a threat to her life. So the emotion that you feel is fear, okay? And then the fourth one that's used very common in sales, unfortunately, is shame. Shame is triggered when something you value is either ignored or, let's just say ignored. So if you ignore your daughter, you're going to feel shame. Like if you're not providing for your daughter, that's going to trigger shame in you. And salespeople trigger shame all the time without even knowing it. And the way they do that is what they'll do is at the beginning of a presentation, they'll go to a prospect and they'll ask the prospect, what are you looking for when you're buying, like an automobile? We call that a value solicitation question. What are you looking for when you buy a car? And what comes back is what the person values. It might be, okay, I'm looking for a red car. So what's going to happen later on down the road when it's time to close the customer. And the salesperson is going to say, don't you remember you said that you wanted a red car? This is a red car. Let's sign the contract right now. So what he's doing is he's taking what they value and he's indicating to the customer that they are ignoring what they value. That triggers shame.
Interesting. I mean, we have to ask questions to diagnose, right? I mean, if I'm working the counter at your rocket store, I mean, I don't just say, hey, buy this one. It's big and it's on sale. And that's enough.
What would happen if when the customer came in, you already knew what they were looking for? Would the conversation be any different?
If I know what the customer is looking for, I mean, my job then is to help them find it and make it a smooth transaction.
Right. So are you asking questions at that point?
If somebody comes in and just says, hey, I need a model 1, 2, 3, I'm going to right over here, anything else. Right.
That's the easiest. It's the sales are so easy when you know what the customer is looking for.
Right.
So the question is, how do we know what the customer is looking for?
Well, and especially if it's a cold call, right, or if it's a big complex sale. I mean, customers are shrewd. They're worried, right? They're concerned. They don't want to get ripped off. They want to get played. They've been lied to, manipulated so many times. Quite often they're not very forthcoming until you get the walls to come down, right? We got to get them to open up.
So what's that called? What's that word to get people to pull the walls down and open up?
Trust.
And how do you
like building rapport? Or
there
what?
You go. That's the word I was looking for, rapport. So what's your definition, or how do you know when you have rapport with somebody?
I don't know the scientific answer, but you can just tell. I mean, the body language changes. They become more relaxed. They'll literally open up. I mean, physically they'll open up. They're more forthright and thorough in how they answer questions. It's just a more symbiotic type of relationship.
So what's the common theme between two people when that's happening? This is what I was studying. I was looking for how is rapport established? And I came up with a very simple definition. rapport is established when both parties feel that they have common values with each other. Because when you have common values with somebody, it's basically like you're looking in the mirror at yourself. So
is this the old, I mean, this goes back to, I mean, you're trying to find that common ground, right? Like, oh, you're in Colorado Springs. I used to live in Colorado Springs. Oh, you like rockets? I like rockets. I mean,
right.
Kind of, I mean, a very superficial, I mean, that's an attempt, right, at building rapport.
Right. There's what we're looking for is the common values that we have between people. So now there's 4 kinds, I call it the 4 classifications of values. And to make them easy to remember, I give them all the letter P. The first thing that we value are people. You know, like you value your family more than you value my family, which is totally normal. And it's the opposite for me. The second thing that we value are our possessions. So you value your car, and when your car gets dirty, you wash it. But your neighbor's car is also dirty, but you're not washing his car because you don't value his car. The third P is that we value is kind of a catch-all category. This is the non-physical things that we value. It could be our spirituality and religion, our hobbies. For you, it's jiu-jitsu. It might be sports teams. A lot of people value their sports teams, you know, and they'll talk about them all the time. So when you're developing rapport, those are the things that we as salespeople are taught to talk about. Talk about your family, talk about your possessions. Hey, I see you got a new car out there. How's that working out for you? Talk about, you know, their passions, like their sports teams that they follow. In order to get common values between them. But there's a 4th category of values, and this is the exciting one. This is the second nuclear bomb that went off. The 4th category are our principles, our guiding principles. These are the rules that we live by. You know, this is how we make decisions. So the thing about these guiding principles is that there's a commonality in them. People that have similar guiding principles have a similar personality type. That's a writer downer. Because what it means is now we have a shortcut. We're looking for what people value, because when we know what they value, we can trigger an emotion.
So you're saying, so people with similar guiding principles have similar personality types.
Temperaments. It's a technical term, but temperament, you know, if you study like Myers-Briggs, there's 16 personality types, but they can be broken down into just 4 temperaments. This is kind of like DISC. There's always 4.
All right, because I'm trying to understand that, right? Like there's people at my church that are, I mean, we hold the same guiding principles in our faith, but it's like, I don't like hanging out with some of them. I mean, we don't jive.
There's a lot of values there.
Sure.
There's the religious values, and then there's the values that they live by.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's 4 personality types, and I look at them as what humanity. So I was studying the values of each of the types. You know, so you have type 1 over here, and they have this group of values that they kind of live by. And then there's another group over here, they have different values that they live by. And I was thinking, why is that? What is the purpose of having these 4 personality types or temperaments? And it's kind of like you're looking at a tool and you see all the features of a tool, and you're trying to figure out what the purpose of the tool is. So if I described a tool to you, so here's this tool, and it's got a big metal block on one end, and extending from the metal block is a wooden shaft. And so tell me when you think might know what this tool is. So, and this metal block, it's got a flat surface on it. And then on the other end, it kind of splits into like a fork. And so you getting the idea of what this tool might be?
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at the values of the people, and I was trying to figure out what the purpose was of that group of people. And so what conclusion I came to was that as a whole, humanity, we're broken down into 4 groups for the purpose of fighting and surviving conflict. That's our purpose for humanity. We've been fighting each other forever. And in order to survive this conflict, you need 4 kinds of people. And I look at humanity as an army. And within the army are 4 groups of people. First, you have to have warriors, because warriors go out and take the fight to the enemy. The second thing you need in your army are people that specialize in logistics, because your warriors need supplies. And some supplies are more important than other supplies. You need your food and your water, you need your weapons, you need shelter, you need transportation, you need to build the roads to get there, you need skills, so you need training and education. So that second group I call the logistics. Then the third group is you need somebody, because the problem with any army is you're limited on resources. You're always short on supplies. You're either short soldiers or you're short, food and water and weapons. You never have enough. So you need a group of people that can take what the army has and find a way to make it more effective. The force multipliers, people that I call the strategists. Then the fourth group of people that you need in your army are the people that take care of everybody else. And if you look at this from the historical perspective, the thing you might think of when you think about a caregiver is kind of like a medical corps. But medicine, in actual reality, is fairly recent. Modern medicine is only a couple hundred years old. If you go back further than that, you could die of a broken arm. So those people, what was important for the army is that your warriors have to have courage, because if your warriors lose their courage, they're going to run. So the fourth group I call the morale officers, because what they provide is courage or encouragement to other people. These are the touchy-feely people that want to, encourage you to do those things that you're not really sure you want to do. And I'm sure you can imagine all the people in your life that you would probably put into that category. Mm-hmm. So the common thread of all of them is that each of those groups have common values. They're similar. They're not perfectly identical, but they are similar enough where that you can use them when you're selling to them.
Interesting. So a lot of times when we're calling in, trying to reach a decision maker, right? Mid-sized company, privately owned, 20 million, 50 million in revenue, that CEO / owner, even though maybe they started out like as a strategist, they encompass a lot of that warrior attitude, like in the Myers-Briggs, like a D, right? A driver, short, quick, to the point, task and goal oriented. How do you what are their hot buttons? How do you get them emotional, listening, opening up. So yeah, that's not me. You know what? I run this by Susan, and if Susan likes it, I'll sign off on it. I mean,
Well, actually, what you were describing was the logistical.
okay.
This is the person that is one of their top values. Again, we're talking the values, similar temperaments have similar values, is they value time. This is one of my values too, because I'm in this category. When you value time, this goes back to developing rapport. So the thing that we don't talk about in developing rapport is that there's a sequence, and we often get the sequence out of order. So when you're meeting for somebody for the first time, what you're doing is you're peppering them with questions to find out about their past, the people, their possessions, and their passions. But if you know that they value time, which is in the principal category, so how do you let them know that you also value time? So normally the sequence is, I ask the question, you give the response. So it's kind of like, hey Wes, what's your favorite, or hey Wes, do you like Chinese food?
Yeah, a little.
And then you might, oh, me too. Hey Wes, do you like the Air Force Academy cadets? Yeah, me too.
I have mental trauma from there. Don't bring it up.
Well, you get the point.
Yeah.
Salespeople become the me too salespeople.
Yeah.
It's like, I have the same value. What we should be doing it the other way, because the person, your prospect, is trying to hide their values because they know what's going to happen. They're going to be shamed by them. If you let out that you like the color red, I know what's going to happen in the future. They're going to take and badger me with that. They're going to shame me with. So people protect their values. And so what we need to do is to display our values first to that prospect so that their values are hidden. And there's a couple of ways to do this. The long way and the short way. Which would you like to hear?
Well, I'm up against the tough quarter here, end of year. I mean, my boss is breathing down my neck. So let's do the quick one.
Okay, so the quick way is emotions. Remember, we said that emotions are triggered when something you value is attacked. But I don't want to trigger their emotion. I want to display my emotion. I want to show them that I get angry at the same thing that gets them angry. So the sequence is, I want to show them.
How do I know what their values are, their emotion? Am I taking an educated guess based on job title or what?
No, the guess you're taking is based on their personality type. So if we know they're a logistical, they're going to value time. So how do I know if you're a logistical? And this is where you have to be able to type somebody quickly. But the thing about the one cool thing about that fourth category of values, those guiding principles, is that guiding principles are a leading indicator. So your guiding principles enter a room before you do. So it's kind of like the light coming out of a flashlight. When you walk into a room, that light enters the room first. And why does that enter the room first? Because as every day, you're making decisions based on your values. And those decisions, what you hope is it affects your future. So if you have a call screener that screens your calls, that's an indication that you value time. And if I know you value time, then I have a pretty good sense that you are a logistical as well. And now that I know you're a logistical, there's other values that are also similar in that group of values of logistical people. So
now, couldn't some of this is going to evolve, right? Somebody may very much be a people person, but as they rise up in stature and in demands, responsibilities, like they got to get somebody to answer their phone. I mean, Bill Clinton was a people person, but he couldn't answer his phone, so he being a logistician and focused on time just becomes a necessary evil of the job, right?
Well, Bill Clinton was he wasn't focused on time. He was always late for everything. So time was not his value.
Right. And that's fine. But I mean, it just proves the point, though. I mean, he has people answering his phone. The nature of the job and that responsibility, somebody had to keep him on task. So if I just assume, just because you have a receptionist or an assistant, if I assume, okay, you're a logistician.
I see your point.
Right.
There's multiple clues of a person's personality temperament. And that's just one of them.
Sure.
Like I said, there's a lot of values. I've classified probably about 20 different values for each of the personality temperaments. So I'm looking for those values. It's kind of like playing bingo. A person is throwing off their values, and you're noting them down on your bingo card. And when you got enough of them on one card, and hardly any on a different card, you could say, hey, this person is in that logistical category.
Do you know how you get 80-year-old women to scream the F word simultaneously? Bingo! But I digress. So what this gets back to, and you know what, this was the hardest part for me in sales. And as I went out on my own, and I'm still studying this, reading people. I was always good naturally, but this was hard for me to learn and really quantify like what it was I'm doing. Because in order to teach it, right, I've got to be able to break it down so it's repeatable.
Right.
And now you're talking about 20 values for each type. I mean, now you're getting into 100.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Hundreds of things, and you start.
We need to break it down simpler.
Yeah.
So the way I do it, because I can't remember all 20 off the top of my head either. So I have to build it on the fly. So the first thing I remember is, okay, we're all an army. And in the army, there's 4 types. What are those 4 types? You need your warriors, since this is an army. Then we need our logisticals. We need our strategists, and we need our morale officers who encourage the warriors. Okay, so now the warrior, what do they value? And what they're going to value are those things that help them do their job and be more successful at it. And so their job is to bring the fight to the enemy. So what characteristics would you need to make your job more successful? Would you be action-oriented? Because if you're not action-oriented, you're lost. Another thing that they value is a fighting partner. Because, and they have a phrase that they say very often is, I've got your back. Because that shows, that they value being a fighting partner. Because if you go into battle and you're fighting one person versus fighting 2 people, 2 on 1, you don't stand a chance, despite what happens in the movies. And then they value speed, getting things done. Another thing that I'm building this on the fly right now. Another thing that they value that you hear very often with the warriors is agility. They got to be agile in their battle. And what they hate is being consistent. Because if you're consistent as a warrior, I'm sure you can understand this from your jiu-jitsu experience. If somebody's got to tell and you know what they're going to do ahead of time, they're dead.
Well, is consistency, I know what you mean, maybe it's predictability.
Okay.
I mean, consistency maybe spills over.
Right.
Discipline,
So consistency is actually a better value for the logistical. So think of like a farmer who's there to grow crops for the Army. Now you do want consistency. You want your rain to happen at a certain time. You want to plant your seeds at a certain time. You want to harvest at a certain time. So that's consistency.
I guess, I mean, and I don't want to split hairs, but I want to make sure like we're clear, because like in jiu-jitsu, right? We do the same drills every single day to warm up. We're very consistent. When we use those are unpredictable, right? So having the discipline to be consistent, to train, to drill, rehearse, but in the battle, yes, you can't be predictable.
Right.
So it's a fine line, but I think they're different.
Right. So now think of the emotion that's going on in the mind of the warrior.
Well,
so
yes.
If you're predictable, so remember, fear is triggered when something you value is threatened. So if you're predictable, that's a threat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so it's going to trigger fear.
And to a degree, I mean, I consider myself a warrior, and I have taught myself through discipline to warm up, to do the drills, because the drills have a purpose. I hate practice. I like sparring. Even when I was younger, I hated practice. I love the game. It's like, let's just play the game. So there, there's some overlap there. I get your point.
So when building rapport, you want to display your emotion, that you have the same emotion to the same value that they do. So if you know that your prospect is of the warrior personality temperament, what you want to do is display a sense of fear of being out there on the edge all by yourself, fighting by yourself, because they have the same fear. And now that you have similar values, there's going to be a little bit more rapport than there was before, without you having to do anything. So the point is, there's a sequence of events, and we often get it backwards, and I'm trying to get it to the right orientation.
Yeah, and there's a lot to this. And all I can say to my listeners, I mean, it's worth knowing, right? I mean, our job, like Zig Ziglar always said, selling is the transference of a feeling, and that feeling is confidence. And if our prospects don't trust us, if we haven't established rapport, they're not going to have confidence in our recommendations. They're not going to have confidence to take the action that we are providing or recommending.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I look at it as like the NLP technique, and I don't do NLP, but they have this phrase called mirroring.
Yep.
And in mirroring, what they don't explain to you is that the purpose of mirroring is to get the other person to feel like they're looking in a mirror. And that's where the values come in, because you absolutely trust the person in the mirror. So if you're looking in the mirror and you say, "Hey, Wes, go get a cup of coffee," do you know, like, and trust the person in the mirror? Is it because they're doing the same movements that you do? Or is it because you know the person in the mirror has the same values that you do? And this is why I always go back to values, because values is the most important thing that we can know and use with our customers.
Mm-hmm.
We want them to establish that rapport, to know us and like us and trust us. They have to feel that our values are the same as their values.
So break them down into 4. I mean, can you do this even somewhat effectively on when you're prospecting?
Yes.
Calling into companies, like how do I know who these people are?
if you have time, then it comes down to customer research, looking at their LinkedIn profile, finding out their interests. If you don't have time, like if you are a face-to-face salesperson, you're like at an auto dealership, the first thing you need to do is to be able to type them quickly. And this takes a little training. It's kind of like learning maybe a foreign language. There is some upfront work, but the payoffs are immense. Because if you can type them, if I could place a customer that's walking towards me into one of those 4 temperaments, now it's a simple matter of just looking up on a sheet of paper, kind of like a little chart that says, okay, these are the values of this person that's walking towards you. Now, if you don't have time to look up on a chart, and because I sell on the internet, I have time. So I just keep a list of values just right next to me. But if you don't have time, then you need to build up that list of values on the fly. And this is what I was, trying to go through of, okay, there's 4 personality types. With what are the types and what would you value if you were in that category? So the people that are face-to-face salespeople are at a disadvantage if they can't type.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you can, it gives you a tremendous value.
Yeah, and I see it all the time. I remember even when I was single, like I had no problems dating. But guys, they'd use the same, but we had this one guy, we called him Tree. He actually kind of looked like him. He was a big dude, good looking guy. Just lean, shredded. He could not talk to women. We would walk down the beach at spring break, and it was like the Red Sea parting for Moses. Like literally women would just stare. And he'd come and get me, say, Wes, he had this big, deep voice, Wes, I need you to come with me. Help me meet this girl. Dude, just go say hi. It's like, he's so beautiful. All he had to do was just say hi, and then it's done. But he couldn't do it. But each situation, I always equate selling to dating. How you approach someone, you got to read. You got to read the room. You got to read the person.
Right.
Are they closed off? Are they looking around? Are they looking down? Are they staring at their drink? Are they not having a drink? Are they gabbing with their friends? All these little things tell you a little something. And I don't know. I knew it intuitively, but that's why, like you, I continued to study this to try to help systematize it to give people a little bit of an advantage rather than just walking in blind.
Exactly. So, one of the other tips that I could give is that personality temperament is also genetic. So you are born with your temperament, and it guides you through your entire life. And if it's genetic, there are going to be some genetic clues that you can see. It's like being able to tell somebody, that's from Spain versus Northern Europe or Africa. There are genetic clues. If you can read those clues, they're not 100% reliable, but they are clues that you can add to the clues from their values.
Yeah, you can start piecing it together. I don't need the full puzzle to know what it's a picture of.
Right.
Just the strategic pieces, and I can fill in the gaps.
So there are, things that people wear give a clue to what personality type they are. For example, men that shave their beards with a very sharp edge, kind of like the movie Iron Man. Can you picture his sideburns and his right? That person, which of the 4 temperaments would you place that person into?
Between the warrior logistics.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm kind of cheating because I know the character. He was a warrior.
Right. So just like that. So now that you know he's a warrior, What does he value?
Yeah.
And so that's where you go. So now for women, one of the little cheats that I use is if you notice they're wearing earrings, and if you know what kind of earrings they are, that's an indication of what temperament they might fall into. For example, you ever see the big hoop earrings? Again, which of the four temperaments would be most likely to wear those kind of earrings? And again, it's the warrior category.
Really?
Yeah.
I would guess like the morale type.
The morale officers are the touchy-feely, soft people. So for them, they like to dress in layers, where the outer layer is very fuzzy, kind of like, I don't know what that fabric's called, fuzzy fabric.
Fleece?
Fleece, right. So that's their tell.
Well, how, like on the facial hair, I mean, everybody, all the cool guys now have the high and tight with the longer hair on the top, greased back, big beard, you know, tattoos. And most of these guys, they can't fight. They don't own an axe. I mean, they can't change a tire on a car, but they look the part. How do you read these?
Again, you're looking, there's multiple clues. So,
Yep.
You know, like the first clue that you described, I would say, okay, maybe they are a warrior, but let's see if there's other clues about them and what they value or their behavior that might put them into a different category.
Mm-hmm.
So there's time. So there's time to observe people.
Yep.
So you can.
How are you at your store, right? Because if I'm typing you, right, you're very methodical. You're slow and deliberate in your speech, your speaking patterns, very level, right? Not a lot of highs and lows. I mean, you come across to me as a true engineer, right? So I can imagine you at the store, standing up, ramrod straight, everything clean and organized, catalogs, brochures, and just like, greetings, big rockets to the left, small rockets to the right. Please don't touch anything. If you break it, you buy it. Let me know if you have any questions. but you smile and I can see you loosening up. But I mean, is that kind of your default style?
Yes. This is the style of the logistical.
Right.
Another value that logisticals have is order. We like things in order. We like sequences. We like systems. We like processes, because that develops order. You know, and again, think of the farmer. You got to have order in your fields, or you're going to lose your crop.
For sure. And like if I'm new to rockets, which I am, right? If I walked in your store, on the one hand, I would love that you're there because you'll answer every single question. But then I might get irritated because I do value time. It's like, dude, I've been here 6 days. You've locked the door. You won't even let me go to the bathroom. I gotta go. I mean, like, I'm gonna go buy this shit online because you talked right through the sale. You know, so do you find yourself having to adjust to
typically, match? Yes. Well, you want to match the values.
Yep.
So the thing, here's another clue for salespeople that are dealing with selling to companies. Is every company has a personality. And so my company has a personality. And the thing about personalities is people with similar personalities are attracted to each other. It's kind of like a magnet. So as a logistical, I attract other logisticals. So my customers are typically logistical. And the reason we attract is because we share similar values. So I don't waste my customers' time. When they come in, I want them out as fast as possible. But the first thing I have to do is establish rapport with them. So once a rapport is established, at that point, I can start asking the questions. So I don't ask questions until I know that there's rapport. And then the one question that I do ask is, what are you trying to achieve? And you can't ask that question until you have rapport established, because if you do, they're probably going to lie to you because they're protecting their values. They're only going to drop their guard when rapport is established. So now once they tell me what they're trying to achieve, now I can start giving them the different options, good, better, best.
So I show the shared values, that builds rapport. Then I can get into the nitty gritty.
Right. And then at the end, it is possible to trigger emotions. But if you have rapport established at the beginning, in actuality, you don't need to trigger any more emotions.
So the logistician, are they an S in the Myers-Briggs?
Okay, so this is why I like Myers-Briggs over DISC, is because of the definitions. DISC, when they describe the D, it's kind of a cross. You got two axes. On one axis you have thinking, and on the other, the end of the other axis, the other end of that axis is feeling. And then they use energy for the vertical axis. So if you're a thinking person with high energy, then you're a D. Well, I'm an introvert, so I don't have high energy. And so for me, the DISC system has that problem. And so this is why I use Myers-Briggs. So in Myers-Briggs, the temperaments, there's a specific definition for each one. So in Myers-Briggs, there's 4 traits. Introvert, extrovert is one trait. The next one is sensing versus intuition. That's the second one. The third one is feeling versus thinking, which is the same one that DISC uses. And then the fourth one is perceiving versus judging. So you have these 4 axes. So if you have 4 axes, that gives you 16 options. How do you get it down to 4? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take introvert and extrovert, and we're just going to throw it away. We're not going to even talk about introvert, extrovert.
This is DISC?
Now, this is Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, okay.
Okay. So now we're left with 3 traits. So if the next trait, so what we want to do is we're going to say, okay, we're going to divide these people up into 4 categories, but we're going to do it on 2 sheets of paper. The first sheet of paper, we're going to call the sensing people. And then the second sheet of paper are the intuition people. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to split those in half. So if you're on the sensing sheet of paper, we're going to say, okay, are you a perceiver or are you a judger? And if you're a perceiver, a sensing perceiver is a warrior. A sensing judger is a logistical. Now on the other sheet of paper, we got the ends, the intuition people. So we've already used judging and perceiving on this sheet of paper over here. So on this other one, we're going to use thinking versus feeling. So if you're an N stands for intuition. If you're an intuition feeler, you are a morale officer. If you are an intuition thinker, you're a strategist. So now I have very concrete definitions for each of the temperaments. It's a little bit deep. I didn't expect to go this deep, but you asked, so I answered.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And there's so much to it, but at a minimum, I wanted to get the juices flowing for everyone, get them to realize the importance of this. If it is hard for you, then welcome to the club. You may be a natural at it, and that's fine. To become a master of it, though, you got to dig in, because natural talent and ability will only take you so far. And the problem is, if you want to grow, if you're a salesperson, individual producer, you want to go out on your own, you've got to be able to train others on this. I always say that's why naturals like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, LeBron James, they'll never be great coaches, right? It's not the game, even though they all worked super hard, they had such natural talent to work with. That's why, like Stephen Kerr, he's a great coach, right? He was shorter, slower. He had to really be efficient and study the game to even be on the court with those guys. So you got to dig into this stuff to be able to replicate it. Otherwise, you might be a top producer, an individual top producer, but you'll always remain just an individual producer. But even if you want to be at the top, you got to learn this stuff. Maybe not rattle it off your top of your head, but you got to know what the heck's going on, because people are complex human beings. Well, we're already at an hour. What do you want people to do with this? You got a Rocket website, but do you sell your books there? Like, where should we send people? I'm going to link to your books on Amazon.
All right. So that's probably where people can find my books. I have, the one that I would recommend is Selling by Personality Type, because that's the newer one. And I wrote it in 2015. And it tells all the, I call them the triggers, the fear and anger triggers that are really useful for building rapport.
Mm-hmm.
And it also explains how you do trigger emotions. What triggers guilt, what triggers embarrassment. So if you want to be able to use these are formulas, so you can pull them out anytime that you want.
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is a value and an interaction with that value that will trigger the emotion. It's just how you interact with the value determines which emotion you're going to trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So that book explains that. And then if they want to contact me, the best way to do it is by email. And my email is tvm@customersecrets.com.
Very nice. All right. I will link to that, and I will come check out your Rockets on my 30th reunion next year.
Oh, that's plan on it, man. If you don't, I'll be upset. I'm right along the interstate, so it's kind of easy in, easy out.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Tim Van Milligan, the Rocket Man. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been great.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, listeners.
So what'd you think, huh? Pretty interesting, if I say so myself. Our purpose for humanity is to survive conflict. So we need warriors, logistics, strategists, morale officers. So, I was the MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, assistant, then junior NCO, whatever, then officer when I was at the Air Force Academy, which meant I threw the tailgates and the parties. And we had great morale. That's all I'm going to say on that. But, there is a need, obviously, for all of those. But can you pick up on them? I've always said our job as salespeople is to adjust how we sell to match how the prospect buys. You've got to pick up on how the prospect is conducting himself or herself so you can adjust. I will literally adjust on the fly as I hear somebody answer the phone. Am I on speaker? Are they in a car? Are they at the airport? Are they in a crowded space? Is it quiet? Do they speak quickly? Do they speak softly? Do they speak formally? Do they greet me warmly? Do they use their title? So there's all kind of things. Just in a millisecond, you can learn something about your prospect and begin adjusting how you sell. It's important. So if you value this type of stuff, if you want to get better, if you're tired of leaving it up to chance, because you're going to naturally click with a certain percentage of the populace out there just based on your temperament. So what are you doing to stack the odds in your favor? Learn this stuff, okay? It'll help you get his book. Listen to the podcast repeatedly. Take more notes, okay? Plug in to the Make Every Sale community, makeeverysale.com. Get the program. Use promo code WEDDING before February 14th, and you can save 45%. Quite a few of you took advantage of the 50% off that I ran, so I appreciate that. But that is over. The quantities were sold, so but still, 45 is legit, and it's still under $200. So it's not like it's a big deal. Okay. You can afford it, but you got to learn it. You got to go through the training to make it work. If you need a speaker for your event, let me know. If you are needing some one-on-one, I'm rolling out what's called Power Days. I spent a day like that with a client, long-term client, so repeat customer. It's always a good sign. We did that back in December. Met down in La Jolla. Very nice day, nice views, and dug into some critical issues around their prospecting and negotiation that is bearing fruit. But if you need help with your CRM, copywriting, salespeople, getting your mind squared away on the right track, I'm your guy. Hit me up, thesaleswhisperer.com. Hit the contact us, and we'll find a time to talk. Thanks for listening. I'll go sell something.